Welcome to Shakti Punch. Pranams. I'm so happy you're here. I'm your host, Pranav. On this show, we go together hand in hand on a cosmic voyage to unravel the mysteries of reality through a dharmic or Indic spiritual and philosophical lens. I'm so happy you could be here with us today. And me and my co-host and producer, Adi. Adi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm so
happy to be here.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited. Guys, just some quick housekeeping here. The time right now is 426,875 years, 174 days, 2 hours, 9 minutes, and 18 seconds left in the Kali Yuga. If you haven't bought your presents yet, now's the time. There's a bunch of sales happening. Just do it, okay? I kind of want to start doing things on Kali Yuga time. Whenever we write dates and stuff on checks and stuff that I write, I'm going to start writing YG or KYG on it instead of CE or anything like that, you know? We're on Kali Yuga time. So happy to be here, guys. Let's get into it. First of all, the 90-foot statue of Bajrangbali in Houston, Texas, or in Sugar Land, Texas, has not left the news cycle. Apparently now it seems that some conservative Christians have taken note of the statue. Gee, I wonder how. It's only 90 feet tall in bronze. Have gone to protest it. So let's hear how these bigots, these horrible vitriolic bigots, have attempted to defile our beloved Hanumanji. And this is according to an article in the Houston Chronicle. The group prayed, marched around the statue for several minutes, and offered prayer to members of the Hindu temple. Oh my God. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but this sounds to me like they were kind of worshiping Bajrangbali. Okay? Like, that's what the vibe is there. That's what the vibe is there. I mean, what's next? Protesters then threw milk on the statue and smeared sandalwood paste on it. It's like... Listen, I know that even in their own minds, these Christians didn't have good intentions vis-a-vis the magnificent Kesari Nandan, right? They thought it was a demon, but what we know about Bajrangbali is, and we're quoting the Hanuman Chalisa is, Bhut Pisach Nikat Nainave, Mavir Jabnam Sanave. At the very mentioning of Hanumanji's name, demons and ghosts flee.
Bhut Pisach Nikat Nahi Aave, Mahabir Jab Naam Sunave.
And to me, karma is a very funny thing. Karma is a very funny thing because these Christians, I believe they were doing something right in their past lives in order for all of this to culminate the way it did. Because even though they went maybe with some kind of a malintent or a sort of hostile intent towards what they perceived as a demon, they ended up revering and worshiping this beautiful and witty and magnificent Bajrangbali. We can't forget Hanumanji was very witty, very clever, an expert in Sanskrit. I mean, he was just amazing. We all know how amazing Bajrangbali is.
The ultimate.
The ultimate. The ultimate. And I think it's very interesting. It reminds me of the story of Shishupal, right? Getting decapitated by Krishna.
Oh, yeah.
Shishupal was very antagonistic towards Krishna the whole time, but actually his death at Krishna's hands was actually a gift that Krishna had promised to Shishupal's mother. Right? He had promised this to Shishupal's mother, that, listen, your son can insult me 100 times or 99 times, but on the 100th time, I'm going to go ISIS on him. I'm decapitating him. And he did that. And it was actually a gift. It was a gift to die at the hands of Lord Krishna. And for me, there's a similar kind of karmic activity working. I think they really did something good in their past lives, that they decided to converge upon this temple and receive the blessings of Bajrangbali by circumambulating the murti and then offering prayers and saying things like, we out with the demons, out with the demons. I mean, this is right in Bajrangbali's wheelhouse. If you know anything about him, our guy was a demon slayer. So on a closing note, all I have to say to that is, welcome to Dharma, Texas Christians. Welcome to Dharma. I think through this act, Hanumanji has surely blessed you for your reverence. Welcome to the fold. We're very happy to have you.
And let us know. Maybe in the future we can do a Shakti Punch field trip to the Hanuman statue.
That's true.
You know?
In order to get to that, guys, you got to get on our Patreon, by the way. There is one up. Right now, we're just asking for donations to the show to help us finance our production. It's very cheap. We have a $1.08. Hello. Tier. There's also a $5 tier. At the $5 tier, you'll be getting more bonus content once we have the capacity to offer that. But we would love anything that you can donate in the Hundi of our Patreon. We would be so honored and so blessed by that. So check it out when you can. We'll have a link in the description of this episode and all other episodes. So guys, let's get into it. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Yoga Vasistha today, and something very interesting happened, Adi, that I wanted to talk about.
Tell me.
And this is I want to talk about Dharma as conceptualized in one aspect of the Yoga Vasistha, right? So just to backtrack a little bit and to give us a bit of a recap, in the Yoga Vasistha, we understand that creation is something that is just moved by a feeling or a notion of consciousness, right? It's just a feeling or notion of consciousness. It's nothing more. And like any good simulation, it deploys AI to do its bidding. Okay, so as atoms form bonds into elemental molecules, which then link up to create various organisms via bonds which are entangled to the point of being inextricable, so deities were also created in order to make all those things work in a sort of demiurgical fashion, if you will. And remember, all of this is created by mind. It's created by a governing super consciousness, which is essentially a pure intelligence, which sort of lays in repose, except for these cosmic ripples that happen. And so at one point, Lord Brahma asks Vasistha, well, how did creation come about? He asks him like 5 times in the chapter on creation. Each time he's like, again, you are asking me again. Vasistha is a bit of a harsh uncle. You know, he's like, you still don't get it, man? Okay, one more time. And he keeps telling him more and more stories. And one story that I found really fascinating, which is Vasistha says, okay, well, listen, you're asking me, and I'll tell you what, I asked Brahma, who is the creator, you know, how did creation come to be? And then Brahma himself said, let me tell you a little story about something that happened to me once. And what happened was at the end of the previous yuga, at the moment of cosmic dissolution, and when things are starting to reformulate and reconceptualize into a new yuga, and creation is beginning again, Brahma awoke after the dissolution of the previous epoch, and he had the notion to create. And he said, I saw subtle visions, multiple universes, all the kinds of things that we think about in creation. He was having them in these subtle visions, including multiple universes with multiple creators. And Brahma himself was a little bit baffled by that. He's like, wow, well, you know, what is this all about? So what did he do? He asks the sun of this universe that he had created. And the sun said, well, let me tell you a little story, buddy. Stories within stories within stories. That's what we're doing here. This is dharmic theology, okay?
With dharmic storytelling structure book coming out in 2028. It's
going to be a pop-up graphic novel.
With little sections within sections within sections. Yes.
Which is a create your own story element. It's going to be more like a video game sort of, but anyway, so the sun narrates the story to Lord Brahma, the story of these 10 sages who they were born from a poor ascetic man named Indu, and he and his wife couldn't have any kids, and they said, please give us 10 resplendent, glorious sons. And they went to Kailash and they prayed to Lord Shiva, and Shiva granted them this boon, right? Of yes, you're going to have these 2 magnificent sons. They had 10 glorious sons. And they had these sons, and then eventually Indu and his wife die. And then the sons are bereft. They're like, oh my God, I am so bereft right now. What is happening? Like, you know, and everything. Remember, all these stories, they always come back around to how can we avoid grief? How can we avoid all these pitfalls of mortality that make us sad and feel bereft and things like that? And they decided, well, the only way to go to find true happiness is to become creators ourselves, right? To achieve the status of Brahma ourselves. And so they did intense penance. Okay, all 10 of them did intense penance in tandem to the point where their physical bodies had dissolved, and all that was left was, you know, their sort of causal body, their astral bodies, which stayed in this meditation until finally they were granted the boon to become Brahmas in their own right. And what the sun told Brahma was, these are actually all you, right? These are all you. These are also Brahmas as well. And Brahma said, well, look, if there's these other creators, why do I need to be creating? What is the need for me to create anything then? And then the sun replied that you don't have the need to create. Your activity as creating is non-volitional. It is your essence. That is what you do simply. Wise men do not desire to do anything, and wise men do not desire to abandon action either. This is what the sun told Brahma. And to me, Dharma is a concept which is very complicated, right? Again, it's popularly known as an untranslatable term. And the reason why, as we mentioned before, trying to define all these sublime concepts, it's like putting a ball gown on the wind, right? The ball gown on itself may look nice, our words might be fancy, but you know, trying to drape them over the wind, it's going to look like tatters and rags, right? Which is why you have the need to be so recursive in all these texts and to constantly reiterate and try and give new different stories and different terms and different ways of understanding these concepts. But to me, this is one aspect of Dharma that I really wanted to talk about, which is Dharma as essence. You guys following me? Because this is weird stuff. And to me, that was the story that Brahma was learning there, right? Your Dharma is your essence, actually. It's not something which arises from a desire that's premised on some other desire, right? It's something that exists of its own sake, that is couched within your own essence. That is your Dharma, right? It's something that you are at your core. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that other people might be doing it, right? It doesn't matter if, oh, this person, and we can put this in concrete terms into what we do now. Let's say I'm a comedian, right? If I say, oh, but there's other people doing comedy, it's like, that doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make any sense at all. This isn't my essence to be funny. This is something that I was saddled with since I was a kid. I was always perceiving and processing reality through humor. Whether I'm successful or I'm unsuccessful, this is who I am. This is the actual true compulsion of my essence, not of my volition, but of who I am. I can't help but to try crack jokes. I do it at often very inappropriate times. It gets me into a lot of trouble sometimes. Oftentimes in my whole life, comedy is the thing that has gotten me into trouble and out of trouble. You know, I would make a joke, piss my mom off. She's chasing me around the house, Tom and Jerry style. Then I make another joke. She starts laughing. We hug it out. It's fun, you know? So this is sort of my essence. It's just who I am, right? So the whole point is that this is an involuntary impulse of what you are. And in this sense, you know, in this context, in this specific context, to ask who you are is actually a product of ego. It's better to perceive yourself as what you are, because then you're kind of trying to define yourself by your essence, right? In Advaita, the whole meditation you're doing is on the concept of I am, not so you can focus on what you are, but to dissolve the sense of I am. Yeah. Makes sense? So I really wanted to bring this up because this really links up with previous conversations that we've been having about karma. Right? The yaga we mentioned, and also this concept of karma, which is nishkama karma, right? And that is karma unmotivated by attachment or worldly gain, right? And that acts in accordance with dharma. That is thus the alignment, right, of karma with dharma, when it is unattached to anything, right? When you're not doing it volitionally. And that's how you're actually dissolving karma in that sense, right? Because you're just acting within accordance of your actual nature. And what is your dharmas? That's a great conversation. How is our dharma constructed? There's many different beliefs and theories about that. One simple one is that this is actually just, our dharma is kind of comprised of the culmination of all of our various gunas. That's kind of what it is, right? And that's what kind of constructs who we are at our essence.
Remind the audience what the gunas are.
The gunas, of course, are the three kind of qualities that attend to all things, right? Which is that of tamas, which is inertness or madness or silliness, I guess you could say. That's a polite way. Yeah. Rajas, which is activity, being very active, ambition, spiciness. And then sattva, which is kind of repose, peace, equanimity. Those are the three gunas. And whatever combination we have of these, whatever balance we're left with, that is something that I think does help to construct what we can understand to be our own svadharma and our overarching dharma in this world, our svadharma being our own personal duties, right? In terms of who we are individually as individual jivas. And I think it's really important to remember that karma, which is unattached, right? It's not motivated by hatred or desire for worldly gain or attachment to things. It is just acting in accordance with your essence. That is a karma that actually is an anti-karma in a sense, in that it liberates you. It helps to dissolve all of your karmas. And I think that's a really important thing to think about, because then that is you living in accordance then, truly with your dharma. And what your own dharma is and how you can discover it. These are things I hope to explore, all of us together on this podcast. But I really did want to kind of bring up this concept of dharma as essence, right? Our dharma as essence. What is our actual cause? What is our actual purpose in a way, right? But what is our essence of who we are? And that is a difficult thing to unpack, but we are going to unpack it together here on Shakti Punch. What do you think, Adi?
First of all, wow. So dharma is an essence, which means it's innate.
It's innate. It is within you, right? Just like Brahma's whole purpose in being conceptualized by Parabrahman, right, was to create.
Do you think that sometimes we're misguided by creating what we think is dharma, but we're actually getting away from where our essence is at times? Because sometimes there's an idea of dharma that it's like... well, maybe it's a misdefinition of dharma then, in a way, where we're like, we prescribe things to our dharma, but it actually is not of our essence.
I mean, look, this is, I think, That's a complicated question, right? In terms of like attach,
Satsang.
and I know in terms of confusing what our dharma actually is.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like that's kind of what we're getting to the core to.
I think what is actually very grounding about what you're saying and what you've learned from Yoga Vasistha is that it is an essence. Sometimes I have followed things in my experiences thinking that is my dharma and maybe not even in that term, but just like kind of by living, and I go off path, and it's actually my essence that brings me back.
I think
stasis kind of, and then going, oh yes, this is the path I need to go on, and then I'll veer off again.
Right.
But the essence is what brings me back. So what
I think that's a fascinating. I think what you just said is so spot on, and I think to me this is also the way to understand what your dharma is you keep coming back to what that essential thing is. Because I came to comedy late in my life. You know, I came to comedy very late relative to other comedians. And it was the kind of thing where I was always so funny. I was always so funny. And people were always telling me do stand-up comedy from a very young age. Mm-hmm. They're like, this guy should be a comedian. He should be a comedian. And guys, I'm not saying I'm amazing. This isn't to puff myself up. I'm not saying I'm the greatest comedian. I am. No. But
he is.
But there are many other things that I thought, well, I had kind of interests and then other influences in my life, which led me to believe, oh, well, maybe I should do this because I was actually good at it. Right. Mm-hmm. Maybe I was good at thinking about academic thinking or things like that, right? But it wasn't necessarily things that I felt truly at home in either. And I think it's through not just failure, because failure itself is never a thing to deter you from your dharma, right? Failure only becomes a thing when you feel attached to the thing, right? And that's a very misguided way of going about life. But I think all those things of going off the path of your dharma, right? And stumbling into different things and this and different things. Life is our soul's teacher, right? Life is our soul's teacher. Understanding what your svadharma is, I don't think is something you are gifted with at the beginning of your life, right? Especially now, especially in a time like the Kali Yug, right? Now we can get into discussions about caste and stuff like that, which I do not want to do right now. But I mean, your dharma is understanding your dharma to me. And this specific definition in terms of your essence, your dharma as essence, right? We're not talking about righteousness or duty or upholding laws and righteousness and things like that, which is another aspect of dharma. By the way, this is all very connected to a concept called Rita as well, which is the Vedic conception of dharma, actually. It was kind of the forerunner to talking about Rita, RTA.
RTA.
Rita. Right, is kind of a forerunner to it, right? And it also ties in a little bit with niyati, which is also something we learn about in the Yoga Vasistha. And these are all things that are about the cosmic order of nature and of the universe, right? But getting back to it, I think it's a process of trial and error, right? We're going through trial and error, and that's how we're understanding what our dharma actually is. And there's no escaping your dharma. There's no escaping your dharma. So the more you kick and scream and punch, it's going to drag you there. Okay, a very smart guy, a sort of neo rishi in his own ways, and Dr. Robert Svoboda, his guru Vimalananda, used to tell him, if you don't come to live with reality, reality will come to live with you. Right. So the more you try to deny what you are and the fruits of all your karmas and things like that, and try to deny your dharma, the harder your dharma is going to come and hit you. I think that's a way of accurately conceptualizing it here.
Totally.
I feel like, so that's what it is to me, right?
That's really affirming to hear, to be honest, because it affirms, and again, another beautiful part of just this dharmic tradition we belong to is that it allows you the space to fuck up.
It does.
Because it is in the fuck up that you reorient and you discover your essence. And that I think is just, wow.
Always.
How the cosmos couldn't give you a bigger hug than that.
It could not give you, I agree 100%, dude. And it kind of goes back in some ways to what Shri Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, which is better to do your own duty imperfectly than to do the duty of another perfectly. Wow. And that's a very interesting phrase to unpack in many ways. And, there's many different interpretations you can approach that with, right? There's many different kind of literary lenses you can approach that with. But what I find interesting in that is that it's like, hey, I'm a comedian. I'm very funny. Or you're a filmmaker, Adi, and you are you are a man who makes films. You're a storyteller. Yeah. Yet somehow you're like, hey, this life of being a starving artist isn't for me. I'm going to go into finance, right? I'm going to go into finance. That decision that you've made is a intensely karmically loaded activity because it is not necessarily your dharma to do that, right? And you will learn that within time. I'm not saying that that's definitively may or may not be your actual svadharma.
Yeah.
But the fact is that by going and doing that, you're doing that for worldly gain. You're doing that because of an attachment to something else, which is not related to your essence as a person. And thus you're accruing more karmas that you're going to have to pay off. You're going to have to pay off that karmic debt one way or another, whether it's in this life or the next life or the life after that.
Which is a type of finance in of itself.
Which is exactly, it truly is a kind of how your karma is amortized in this life and in the next and all that. And when you can
We said it here first. The Maharishis were the first finance bros.
They were the first finance bros.
They just dealt in the currency of karma.
Shri
points.
Chamat. Do you know that guy? He's like,
Chamat Balapitya.
Exactly. Shri Balaji. All these these were the OG rishis were actually finance dudes because maybe they did have an innate understanding of what it means to pay it out.
Clearly they
arbitrage, amortization of investments and debts and things like that. There is a kind of financial language that can be applied here. I'm not the guy to unpack that, though.
And neither am I. He's a comedian, and I'm a filmmaker. We're not finance bros.
Speaking of, guys, we do have a Patreon. We do $1.08. You can feed 2 poor brown kids.
Patreon Hundi, please. Let's
put it in the Hundi, guys.
Yeah.
We need it there. But yeah, it's a fascinating conversation, I think. This is, again, always linking karma to dharma. To me, this is also a great through line. And when you do that, it's like this whole thing of the 3 bodies that we talked about, it leads to that alignment of your 3 bodies in many ways. Because when you're doing your dharma, your body feels good. You're emotionally happy. You feel healthier, right? You feel fuller as a person. And when you're taking good care of your gross body in this way, and you're taking really good care of your subtle body, which is all your feelings and your thoughts and your emotions and your actions, or in your intentions rather, that then of course has consequences with your causal body. And of course that the chain of activity runs both ways, right? At the beginning of it, it runs from top to bottom, but our purpose in this life is to now rectify things or to come back to the source, to Parabrahman, from a bottom up kind of momentum. I feel like that's a good place to stop.
I do too. Hari Om, y'all.
Hari Om, Pranam. Thank you guys so much for coming to Shakti Punch. We really appreciate you being here. We love you guys. Once again, we do have a Patreon. We'd love if you could join. But, follow us on the socials on Instagram. Follow Adi at Adi Parige, me at Pranahaha, and of course at Shakti Punch on Instagram. We love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Hari Om.